Hi everyone. So today I am going to be working or showing you how I worked on a cloud project. So this was my very first cloud project. I spent some time and then I got so many errors while working on it, but then eventually it worked. So I'm going to be replicating the entire process once again just to show you how we can create that. So without any further ado, I'm going to share my screen and then we're going to go from there. Awesome. Okay, so I am going to go to my Figma where I have created a user flow that I can show you how it works, right? So what we have is a user, and that user is going to upload photos into an S3 bucket. And then they're going to retrieve those photos, setting into S3 through a CloudFront, going through a Route 53 with a custom domain associated with it. And then also we will be having an ACM certificate as well. So that's what we have. And what I'm assuming is that you might already know what those services are and what they do. But very quick, I would say recap or overview. So S3 is used for storing object or storing any kind of files or media. In my case, it would be photos and videos. And then CloudFront is used to distribute the files to users all over the world. And Route53 is actually used for DNS management. And then in case of, you would be thinking, if I can upload files to S3, why not I am going to be directly accessing back through the S3? You can definitely do that. But the reason we are using CloudFront is because, I have some files sitting here somewhere, I would say in Europe, right? Or my server is sitting here somewhere in Europe. And then I have some users, say somewhere in let's go North Africa, right? So that's where we have a user in here. So that's an edge location. Say the user is sitting actually in South Africa. What they do is they're going to access the content from my S3 that's sitting somewhere in Europe, right? And what's happening is they access those content for the first time, and then those content are going to get cached, and all other users are coming along. They're not going to try to access the S3 again all the way going to Europe. They're going to access those cached content closer to themselves, and that's why and that's one of the reasons that make it much more faster. So instead of them trying to retrieve objects from S3 directly, they can access them through an edge location where the content are already being cached, right? And also, for example, there are some in South America, right? So one user accesses those content first, and those content are being cached here. And then when the new users comes along and then access, they don't go all the way back. They just get it from the edge location. And that's I would say, the purpose that we're adding CloudFront in there. And then if I go back, then I'm adding a custom domain name. For example, I don't want to provide a CloudFront domain name. So whenever I create a CloudFront, I also get a domain name. So I don't want my user to go to the CloudFront domain name. I want them to go through my custom domain name. So what I did was, initially, I created a custom domain name with GoDaddy and then used that custom domain name to create a hosted zone in Route53. And once that hosted zone is being created, and then I got a CNAME, and then I connected that or associated that with the CloudFront, and now the CloudFront is being associated with S3, and now when a user try to access the S3 directly, they cannot do it. They definitely have to first go through my custom domain name through the Route 53 while using the ACM to encrypt end-to-end, I would say internet traffic, and then they go through the CloudFront, and then they're allowed to go to S3 bucket, right? If I go through the steps really quickly, so what we first do, number one, is we register a domain name, right? So what we do is we register a domain name, custom domain name with the GoDaddy. and then we create a hosted zone in Route53 with the same domain name. And then we move the name servers from the Route53 to GoDaddy, and that might take, say, sometime 24 to 48 hours, but usually it's less than that, but sometimes you do have to wait that long. So for the name servers to propagate, right? And then we create an ACM certificate and create related, I would say, Route53 CNAME for that certificate. And wait until the status of the certificate become issued, and then we go to create our S3 bucket, and then next go to the CloudFront, and then make the origin of the CloudFront as my S3 bucket. And for the CNAME, I use the custom domain name that I have, and also select the associated certificate from the ACM. So that's what I have. And then the end thing is I have a cognito. I won't talk about the cognito in this video. I will save that for another video, because what I'm going to do, I'm going to create an app, a front end for an app where I can put this backend into that front end. And that would be the time when I will need to use cognito. So you might definitely be lost, me saying those steps as it is written. So the best way is to go ahead and start working on it. Okay, so the very first step is to go to GoDaddy and create a username, create a custom domain name. So what's happening is I already created a custom domain. So for this video, we'll be using that custom domain, because if I create it right now, I cannot use it right away, just because I have to wait that 24 to 48 hours. So I'm going to register a domain name, but I will not use that domain name. I will use another domain name that I already have created, but still I wanted to show you how it works. So from the very beginning, what we wanted to do is create this kind of a custom domain name, right? Or anything that you would like to. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to GoDaddy, right? So I'm logged into my account right now. So this is the custom domain name that I registered already. So I will be using this one, but just for your sake to know how we can use it, let me just do that. So I'm going to go with a similar domain name just to see how it looks like. So I'm going to put lunastars. And you might definitely be wondering what kind of custom domain name that is. And it was just because it was the cheapest one I can get, because most of them are pretty expensive, right? So here you go. We have these things here. So this one say lunastars.ca. So I have to go for 3 years. I don't want to spend that $19.99 or $20. I wanted to go with something really, really cheap, right? And let me see what I can actually find. Okay, so this one is actually lunastar.online, and then I can get it for $1.35 for the first year. Why not? Let's just go with this one, right? And see where it's going to take me, right? So I'm going to continue with this thing. And then they say, do you want some protection? So at this point, I am not interested in any kind of protection. And then they say, start your website thing comes with it for free. And then they give some options for an email. So I'm not interested in any of that. So I'm going to go straight to my card. And then here they're going to give me, that's a huge amount. I'm definitely paying that if they selected 5 years by default. So I wanted to say that I only need it for 1 year, right? So if it's for 1 year, then that's what I actually have, right? So I'm just paying $1.35, which is not that much, because I would definitely not be using this domain name for a long time anyways. I'm going to ready to pay. It's going to get some of my information. I hope you are not looking into there, or if you are, then I am going to hide that out afterwards. Anyways, okay, so I'm going to review my order, and I am going to just complete the purchase of it, right? So it's going to take some time. So I'm going to try this thing later. You want to see it. So it's being processing. And then here you go. Congratulations, you got your domain name, and I just spent $1.80. So I'm going to go to my domain name. So they have a few things. I will say we'll do this stuff later on because I don't need it. What I really wanted to show you is how you change the name servers, right? So that's the place I do wanted to show you. So let me go to my domains in here. So lunastar.online was the one that I just registered right now. So here you go. I click on the DNS management, right? So what's happening, usually it does take some time. So I think so it just worked right away for now, but sometimes you do have to wait until that registration is complete. So I see a bunch of A record, NS, CNAMEs, and these ones. So I'm not touching a single thing in here. The only place that I go to name servers. I have two name servers in here. So what I have to do is change these ones. Change these ones to what, right, would be your question. So I go to my Route 53. So as you can see, I am, for example, if you're not in Route 53 already, just search it here and go to Route 53. And then once you go to Route 53, what you really need to do is to create a hosted zone, right? And then the simplest thing is I just click on my thing, and then that hosted zone should be exactly the name of your domain name. So what was the domain name that I had? The better thing is just to copy and paste it in there, right? So I'm simply going to click lunastar.online, and I will see the second domain, because I have another one with the same definition. The same exact name, except that is missing the S part, right, in there. So I just want to put the second lunastar's domain name, right? So just for me to remember which one I'm working on, right? Domain name. And then it's going to be a public hosted zone, so I'm not touching anything else. I simply click on create hosted zone. And then it's not going to take any longer. So now what's happening is I got NS four name servers in here. So those are the four name servers that I would need to copy and then paste it into my GoDaddy. So just remember, don't use those tailing dots that we have at the end. Try to copy it before the dot, right? So I'm just going to copy this thing, go to my domain, and then I will say click change name servers, yes. And then I will say I will use my own name servers to add four of them because we have already four of them. And for me to go explaining what is a name server, why do we want to make those changes, I'm going to save that for another video, because in this video, what I really need to do is to show you exactly how do you register your domain name with GoDaddy, and then how do you kind of transfers or kind of connect your GoDaddy to your Route 53, so that even if your domain name is from GoDaddy, you still can use it in your Route 53, right? So I can definitely buy the domain name from Route 53, but usually they are $12, and then I don't get many options. But with GoDaddy, I get good options, and then at the same time, they're much cheaper. As you saw, I only spent $1.80 on that one, right? So I'm going to complete the remaining of it. So what's happening is once the domain, these name servers are being moved there, so anything that goes to that domain name goes to GoDaddy, and then GoDaddy tells them that go to Route 53, right? And then once it's in Route 53, then it's going to tell it to go to CloudFront, and then from CloudFront it's going to go to the S3 bucket. So that's how the process will work. I'm going to click on save, and then I'm going to wait for a few moments, right? So they said you wanted to really go ahead with that. I would say yes, continue. And then after a while, when I come here, I won't see anything in here, and then in the name servers, I will be seeing all four of them that I transferred over from Route 53. So this is how it's going to work. So as you can see now, everything has been disappeared. And then the only thing I see are the 4 name servers that I have from my Route53. So this is again how the process works. First thing, you go register on a custom domain name. And then once you have that, you go to Route53, you create a hosted zone, a public hosted zone, and then that public hosted zone is going to give you some name records or NS records. You move them to your GoDaddy name servers, and then once you reach this stage, what you have to do is you have to wait at least for 24 to 48 hours. Usually it's less than that. You just wait for a day, and then it works. So I'm going to leave this thing right now. I will not be using this domain because it's not available right now, but I actually have another domain registered a few days ago that I am going to be using. And that one is actually lunastar.online. So as you can see, that was created on May 24th, right? So I'm going to click on this one. So this is now what it is. I wanted to go to my DNS and I'm going to go to my name servers. You can see these 4 servers, name servers, were actually from Route53. If I go to my hosted zones, so this was the one that I created a few days ago. So lunastars with an S was the one we created today, and then lunastar.online without any S is the one we created a few days ago. So we're going to be using this one now. So these 4 name records have already been moved here, have been waited for at least 24 to 48 hours. So the DNS propagation actually does work. So I don't have to worry about that anymore. So I'm going to go back to my steps. So what we did was we registered a domain name, right, with GoDaddy, which we did, right? So in this one, I have said club, but what you can actually do is lunastars.online, right? So then, just because we have lunastars, this is the exact domain name that we registered before. That's the one we're going to be using it. And then the next one is Luna. That's also lunastars.online. Let me just confirm really quickly. So in Lunastar is the one that we registered the other day that we'll be using. So I'm going to put Lunastar like that. So me trying to save some money is actually making me confused over those domain names, right? Which one has an S and which one doesn't. But anyways, okay, we did create we did register a custom domain name. We went to Route53 and we created a hosted zone, added our name servers from GoDaddy into from Route53 into GoDaddy, which is step 3, right? So move name servers from Route53 to GoDaddy. We did for that one to propagate, and then now the 4th one that we are going to be working on, create an ACM certificate, right? Why do we need an ACM certificate? You can go without it, but it's usually a good practice to have one, right? Because it gives you an HTTPS, which means that there is an SSL connection and there is an end-to-end encryption between the user and the server. So nothing in between when the traffic is in transit. No one can tamper with that, and that's the reason you wanted to use a certificate, right? So if this user is trying to fetch an item from S3, so in order for this entire process to be end-to-end encrypted, that's when you need an ACM, right? So here it is. So again, if you don't know where to go to ACM, just simply search it here. So we have Amazon Certificate Manager or simply Certificate Manager. So I'm going to click on that because I'm already on that, I would say, page. So I'm just going to come back here. So these are the list of my certificates I have already issued. But what I'm going to do is issue another one just to see how it actually works, right? So I'm just going to click on issue certificate. Do you want a public certificate? Yes. So it's pretty simple. We don't have to do much, but we have to get our exact domain name and then put it into there, right? So, or maybe I can go into into my Cloud53 or into my GoDaddy. It really doesn't matter. So what I'm going to do, I'll copy this thing, go to here, and then I click it here. So I put my thing, and then I see DNS validation is recommended. Usually it's the best way to do because it's much easier as compared to email validation. And then you pretty much don't touch anything else. Put the domain name in there. And then what you do, you simply request it, right? So once you request it, it's going to actually take some time. So I'm going to click check the status. So as you can see, the status is still pending. So for it to get validated, so you wanted to go actually create records in Route53. So for them to check that you actually own that certificate, right? So for them to validate it, what you have to do is you have to take this CNAME and its value, go to Route53 and then create record, and then put, for example, put the record name, put the value in there and create it. But what they have done is they have really made the process much easier. So what you do is simply say create record in Route53 and then they're going to do it right away. So there is nothing else I have to do. Those things are being selected just for the filters. But I only have one domain name at this point. So I'm going to click create record, right? And then so successfully DNS record were being created. As you might have noticed before in Route53, we only used to have an NS record and an SOA, right? But then now, since we created an ACM, then a CNAME will be created in there. So let me just refresh that. So I'm going to go back into my Lunastar, and then now you can see we have 3 records, and then this is actually a CNAME that's corresponding to my certificate in ACM, right? So that's one CNAME. Okay, we have it. And then I'm going to go back to my the certificate. Then I have to sometime wait for some time. Sometimes takes quicker, as you can see is being issued. Sometimes it does take some time. So okay, awesome. So what happened is, let's go to our steps. We registered the domain name, and then we created a hosted zone in Route53. And then we moved our name servers from Route53 to GoDaddy, and then we created an ACM certificate, and then created relevant or related CNAME for Route53. We waited for some time, and the certificate is being issued. So we did cover, let's see, the 4 steps. Now is the time for us to create our bucket, S3 bucket. So since our thing is lunastars, right? So I'm going to be just getting a similar name for this bucket. So let's just go with this bucket name and then create one. Awesome. Okay, so since I'm already on S3, but again, if you can find it, what you do is just click S3, click on it, and then that's where you're going to be taken to that page, right? I think it's just refreshing my page, but anyways, I'm not going to do anything else. I'm just going to go to create bucket, and I'm going to put the name of my bucket, so lunastars, and then make sure it's US East 1, because I'm going to, when I'm adding more and more, for example, sometimes happens certain services have to be in the same region. So for me to be do not get any errors afterwards that one service is one region, in another service is another region. So using all of my, I would say, services in one region to be not confused later on, right? So I am not touching again anything else. I wanted to block all the public access, and the reason is for that. We do not want anyone to be accessing our S3 bucket directly. We want them to be accessing it through the CloudFront. So that's why I am doing this everything. So again, I am not touching anything else, and I simply wanted to create the bucket. That's it. So okay, so our is Lunastar bucket has been created right now. So there is nothing in here, and then it really doesn't matter if we go to the permission, right, and then in the permission, if you can see in the bucket policy, we still have nothing, and it's totally okay for now. But once we create a cloud distribution, then we have to add something to the policy saying that this S3 bucket can only be accessed through the CloudFront and nothing else, or not directly, right? That will come once we create the CloudFront distribution. So let's go to our steps once again. So what we did was we created an S3 bucket with this name. We made sure that block all public access is on. And then I wanted to go as my sixth step to go to the CloudFront, right, and create that distribution, right? So what we do is we select S3 as an origin, and then we create an origin access identity. And the origin access identity means that this S3 bucket is only accessible via the CloudFront, and then it's not allowed, no one is allowed to access it directly, and for that reason you have to create this one. Awesome. Okay, so let's just go back to my console, and then what I'm going to put is CloudFront. So here's my CloudFront. I'm going to open it in a new tab, and I am going to go and create a new distribution. I have a few distributions from before, but simply ignore them because I wanted to create a new distribution. And then now is my domain name, right? So what was my bucket name? My bucket name is simply lunastar.s3.amazon. So again, we are not going with anything that says anything else. Again, these names might be confusing, but our bucket name was simple, lunastars.s3.amazon AWS.com. So that was our S3. Path is optional because for the name, they have selected the same thing as my, I would say, as my bucket name. Anyways, okay, so public now, this is origin access. Now that's where you have to make that change, right? So there is one thing we see, origin access control setting. It's recommended. So it's a newer version that they have added. It wasn't there before. When I tried it with this one, I was getting some errors, or I didn't know how to do it properly. But just as you know, it's my first cloud project, so I'm going to do with the most simple ways that I can still work my CloudFront. I can still make my CloudFront work and still kind of not go with the more advanced options. They're not advanced option, but just for me that I don't know how to use it, I used it and I was getting some errors. So I'm not going to get that. So I'm going to instead click on legacy access identity, and that's when I'm going to create a new origin access identity. But I also have to make sure, yes, update my bucket policy, because it's much easier. If you don't say don't update it, then they'll have to manually create that, but it's better for them to create it in now. Also, the origin access identity is that I don't have one from before, so I'm going to create one more. It's a simple thing. There's nothing different, so I can use either the same name, or what I can do is I can use another one. So it's origin access identity. I am going to say it's for lunastars. And then I can just simply put today's date, because sometimes that just make life simple, right? So I remember how much date it was, but it doesn't really matter what name they give to it, right? So okay, I created my origin access identity. I said yes, update the bucket policy, and then for the advanced settings, we are not going to touch anything in here as of now. Even for the behavior, I'm not going, so it's better that we choose direct HTTP to HTTPS. So if we have a user and they're using HTTP, and then they're going to be redirected to HTTPS, right? And then we have get and head. Again, I'm not going to say what those methods are for, but I'm assuming you might have an understanding of that. But in another video, I might try to cover that. So restrict viewer access, and then still we're not going to touch this thing, because it actually means when a user is going to access a cloud, access an origin through the CloudFront, that's when you need to have signed URLs. For example, Right now, my user can only retrieve their objects through the Route53 CloudFront in S3. So it's them retrieving or them listing the objects. But if they wanted to upload, I would say, any media files through the CloudFront, that's the time when we need to give those signed URLs. But that's a completely different topics. Let's not go into that as of now. So I'm not going to restrict that at all. And then they have something cache policy and origin request policy. We go with the recommended option, don't touch anything else. And then so we're going to come to not doing anything else in here either. And then say this is where it comes, where now we say that CNAME or alternate domain name, that's when we add our custom domain name, such that when someone is accessing our custom domain name, what these do is they actually are being directed to the CloudFront, right? So this was from Route53, our custom domain name. I go back to my CloudFront distribution, I put this name in there. And then they say, do you have an SSL certificate? It's also important that you select this one at this time. So for us, it was Luna stars, right? So you can see we have two of them. One is with S. We're going to forget about the S1. We're going to go with the one that which we used to have before. So I'm going to go to my ACM just to confirm that I have the right certificate, right? So I go to my certificates once again, and then the one that was done today was actually lunastar. Okay, so this is the one we are going to be using. We issued this one, lunastar, with no S. For me to remember, no S for today. Okay, so I'm going back here and then I select the certificate. So it is lunastar without an S. I selected that certificate for it. And then again, I'm not going to touch anything else on this side. Then I'm going to create distribution. I didn't say enable security or not. For this moment, I will say no, because I don't want it to incur any extra charges, because I don't know which one will charge me and how much. So I'm going to ignore those advanced or extra steps and click on create distribution. Also, this distribution is going to take at least I would say 15 to 20 minutes sometime. So it's in the process of deploying. Meanwhile, what I can do is to go ahead and add some content to my S3 bucket, and then to see if we can actually access it through the CloudFront. So it's 3:44 right now, so maybe up until 4 p.m. I'm going to wait. But meanwhile, I'm going to go to my S3 bucket, right? I'm going to refresh it and see if the cloud distribution, when I say to update it, if they have actually updated my S3 policy, right? Because that's also important. We wanted to make sure that this S3 bucket is only accessed through the CloudFront, right? So here you go. Before we didn't have any policy, but then now this policy says it's policy for CloudFront private content. Effect is allow. Principal is actually this specific distribution. So as you can see, this is also the name of my distribution, which is HQ3, right? Never mind. This is actually the origin access identity. So this is not the name of or the ID of the CloudFront. So let me show you where we can see the origin access identity we created. So we go to security, and then we click on origin access identity. So we are going to go with the one that we created today, right? So I should be actually seeing that Luna stars. Might be interesting if I don't see that. Let's see cloud origin access identity in here as of now. If not, then there might be something wrong. Or if not, what I'm going to do, go back to my distribution. And then this is my distribution, right? And I go to my distribution, and then under where it says origin, I go to my origin, and then I'm going to see what is my origin. Let me just go here. So this is my origin access. So if I do something like this, or maybe like this, oops. Okay, awesome. So now this is the origin access identity ID that I should be seeing in my S3 bucket, right? So if this is the one, so it says B8F, right? So if I see a similar one in there, B8F, then that's good. This means this origin access identity that I actually created, and in which I should be able to find it here, B8F, right? It's a bit interesting that I don't see it here, but the good thing is that I am actually seeing it under my CloudFront distribution, so it really doesn't matter, right? So I am going to go back to the one that was actually deploying, right? I think it was this one, HQ3. Yeah, since this one is still in the deploying status, right? And again, I went to the origin, and then I went to my origin access identity, and then I see BRF, that's the origin access identity, and then I see that we're the same one here in my S3 bucket policy. So this means it's actually working well, right? So now another thing we can do, we can add a few or upload a few items into my S3. So afterwards, I can try to see if I can access it, right? So I have a few images, some cute, I would say, animals. So let's add those ones in here, right? I'm going to add these few ones, open them, and then I'm going to say upload. So that upload is going to take some time, let's say 20 hours, but it definitely not going to take that long. I'm going to go to my deployment, to my distribution. So it says last modified. This one, so it definitely means it's being, I would say, already created or deployed. So I don't have to worry much. So once again, I'm still waiting for these objects to get into my S3, and then we will test if it actually worked. So what I'm going to do is give you another quick overview of what we did, the steps. We created a custom domain name through GoDaddy, and it created a hosted zone in Route53. That's where my Route53 is. We went, for example, we just hosted zones, and I said create hosted zones. I simply put the domain name, and then I click create hosted zone, make sure it's a public hosted zone. There is another story for private hosted zone, but for now we're just focused on public one. You create that one, and then you get a hosted zone in here, and then for that hosted zone, in our case, which was lunastar.online, right? This one was actually we get some CNAMEs, and then we transferred these CNAMEs over to our GoDaddy name servers in here. So those are those 5 CNAMEs that we actually had. And then next thing is we did domain, we did moving the name servers, and then we created an ACM certificate. How we did that? It's pretty simple. You go request a certificate, and then you say next, and then into the fully qualified domain name, you put entirely whatever I would say, custom domain name that you used to have. You put it in here, and don't touch anything else in here. You simply click request. So once that certificate is being requested and it's being done, then what you do is, let me just go back to the certificate that we used to have in here. Its status will be pending. What you do is you simply say create records in Route53, right? And then you say create because it has already been created. So there's nothing else for me to do. So that was how you created your certificate. And then you went ahead and you created your S3 bucket. And then once S3 bucket was created, you went to your CloudFront distribution. And then in the CloudFront distribution, you create distribution. And here you actually selected your S3 as an origin. The name was automatically being filled. and then you didn't touch anything else. You said redirect HTTP to HTTPS, and then in the origin access identity, you selected, no, not this one. This is not the one that was for the origin access identity. Was something down there. For this one, we selected this one, and then this is where we say for the CNAME, we said add, and then add, we actually put our CNAME in here, which was our custom domain name. And then CNAME is actually kind of mapping our domain name to the CloudFront, right? So for example, if I have my custom domain name and I want that to be mapped to another service in AWS, in this case CloudFront, that's when we will be using a CNAME. So that's how it actually worked. And then I think so I might be missing one more step in my Route53, which I just remembered right now. And that is, now we have to create a CNAME, an A record for my CloudFront into my Route53, because without that it wouldn't work. It's because we talked about the CNAMEs, right? So CNAME is actually when service in AWS, such as CloudFront, need to be mapped to a custom domain, like in our case, lunastar.online. That's when you do this one. But now I have to create an A record in Route53, and I will tell you why and how, right? So right now we have 3 of them, right? So let me just say create a new record, and I will put an alias. In my domain name is, I'm just going to leave it as it is, and then I'm going that to be routed to my CloudFront, right? So I'm going to be putting that to my CloudFront. So an alias to the CloudFront distribution. So that's what I am actually going to be doing. And then I choose the distribution name. So this is the distribution name that I actually used to have. And I simply say simple routing. So let's do something. I think so I did say something that was not right about the CNAME and alias, and that's when we always get confused. And if you get confused, I will tell you how you can remove your confusion, right? And that's when we come to ChatGPT and say, tell me the difference between alias and CNAME in AWS, right? So let's just see what it's going to tell us, right? So sure, both alias and CNAME records are type of DNS record used in AWS, specifically Route53. They allow for mapping of a domain names to resources. So the first part was right for me. It's saying mapping a domain name to a certain resource, in our case, which was the CloudFront, right? Mapping our custom domain name to a resource, that's CloudFront. So CNAME, right? A CNAME or canonical name record forward one domain or subdomain to another domain name. It essentially serves as a redirect at the DNS level. So for example, CNAME record cannot be set at the root domain level. For example, you can't map an example.com to other example.com using a CNAME record, but you can map a www.example to this one, right? And then CNAME records incur a small time penalty. I'm not going to this one. And let's go for the alias records. So alias records are Route53 DNS records. They provide a similar function to the same CNAME, right? But alias record can be used at the root domain level, unlike CNAME records. So you can map example.com directly to AWS resources. So for example, as you might have seen, right? Let's just go to my Route53 because that's where we want it to be. So you see, I didn't add anything in here. I simply say the root domain name, which is lunastars.com. It's not like blog.lunastars.online, right? So it was actually my root domain name. I don't add anything in my subdomain name, right? And I'm going to be selecting an A type, an alias, and then I am going to be putting my CloudFront. Let's just create this one for now and see how it actually works, right? Okay, awesome. So you can see, let's just go for tell you the difference between a CNAME and an alias, right? So this was the one So for the record name, this is what we have. So let's just click on edit it and we'll see what we have. So our record tab is a CNAME, alias is turned off, and the value, this is what I have, right? Then you can see in the first one, right, we had nothing in here in the subdomain, right? But and then this is our root domain level. So that's for the CNAME. In the CNAME, what you do is you can add a subdomain in front of it, and then map that to a root domain level, right? And then in case of alias records, right, so I'm going to close this one, and then I'm going to go to this one. Let me just click on this one. As you can see, there is nothing into the subdomain. So what it means is you can which they say apex or naked zone or something along those lines, for example, then they say you can't map an example.com to other.example.com, right? So you have an example.com. In our case, it's lunastars.com. We cannot do it, cannot map it to something in front of that root domain level, right? But in alias record, you can actually do that, right? So what you see, you can map an example.com directly to an AWS resource, which we did in our case. So in CloudFront, what we did was we used our lunastars.com, directly mapped it to a CloudFront. So that's what we can do with an alias record, but that's something we cannot do with a CNAME. But both of them have exactly similar purpose, right? Which is mapping resources, mapping our domain name to resources. The purpose for both of them is the same. The only difference is that CNAMEs cannot be set at the root domain level. There has to be something in the subdomain level, in the same way as you can see in my Route53 in here. So for the A record, which is selected in here, I don't need to add anything into my subdomain level. I can use it at root name, right, or domain level. But for the CNAME, I had actually have to have something into my subdomain area. And then definitely I don't want it to go with an alias, because either it's going to be an alias or a CNAME. Awesome. Okay, so we did create our I would say a record to map our Route53 into CloudFront, right? So let's just view its status and see how it's what's happening with it, right? Okay, no, the host reason was there, so let me just go back to my lunastar.online, and I wanted to go to this one. It should be working, right? So I'm assuming, because it usually when they give you a status, they say in sync, right? If it's in sync, it's done, but I'm assuming it's already done, because it's usually really quick. So let me just go back to my S3 bucket. It's almost closer to 4, but I'm not sure. Some of them actually did work. Some of them, I think there was this video. It was just a 2-minute long video, not much than that. It's still taking that long. What I'm going to do, I'm going to stop my recording for a second. And then once this is done, I'm going to come back to it. If it was taking long, then I'm going to cancel it. But I will make sure we have some items in our S3, and then to see if it's actually going to work. So I'm going to be back with you in a second. I'm stopping the recording just for now. Awesome. Okay, so welcome back. So this was one of the steps that originally I forgot to create, because we definitely need to create an A record with alias on in Route53 for CloudFront, which we actually did, right? So now I went to S3 and actually canceled that video that was taking longer. So what's happening now? Let's just quickly go back into our flow and see what's happening. We created an S3 bucket with all public access off, because we didn't want anyone to access it. So public access block was on, but public access was actually off. We created a CloudFront distribution we added a CNAME to it, right, along with an ACM certificate. And then in the Route53, we created an alias record for the CloudFront. And now what's happening whenever a user is trying to see something into S3, they cannot go directly through an S3, but what they can do is they can actually go through the custom domain name and then reach out the object. So now it's time for us to check out if our distribution actually have worked, right? So what's our domain name, right? So our domain name was lunastar.online, right? So what I'm going to do is, if that's our domain name, right, I'm going to access it, and you can definitely see this access denied. And the reason for that is because at the way CloudFront, we are going to reach out to CloudFront and we don't put the slash and then whatever object is into my bucket, nothing is going to happen. And I have to go ahead and find one of those key value, right? So for example, if I click on this object, and then key is actually the name of this object. So I'm just going to copy this thing and I'm going to come to my CloudFront, put that in there. And here you go, I have a cat and a rabbit that I had. Let's just try it for one more object and see if those things are actually working. So I'm not sure which one I might want to go with. It shouldn't really matter, so I'm going to go with this one. So here you go, you can see. Also, those objects are small, but you can see they're very cute, bunny and cat. So awesome, our distribution actually did work out. So I think you won't need any further recap or revision because we actually did go through everything. But for you to see, we access our lunastar's domain name, and then we were able to reach out to S3. Now let's just check something. If we were actually able to reach out to S3 objects directly without accessing it through the CloudFront, right? So if this is my object, I'm going to click on this thing, right? And this is has to take me there to open it. Is actually, if I do it directly through the objects, it actually is working. But if I go back to my bucket, right? I'm going to go to my properties and wait. What I told you that I should be not able to access my objects through direct access, right? And if we can still access it, there might be either that I don't know what's happening or there might be some permissions on. So we're going to check that block all public access is turned on, which means we should not be able to access these objects directly. But we can still access it. Let me just go to my properties again, or no, I mean to my objects. I'm going to go to one specific object. So this is my object URL. I am able to access it through the object URL, right? Try it once. Oh, actually, it's not working. So let me just try that thing once again. Why it did work the first time, that's what I don't know. Let me see. So okay, here you go. This is actually not working, right? How it appeared that other object, I don't know. So I am in my bucket and I am clicking on any of those objects in here, and I click on this URL and it's actually not allowing me to access that directly through the bucket, right? So awesome, it actually worked out, right? So what's happened is I tried to directly access this tree, denied it. But if I try to access that very same object, right, which is CR12 JPEG, right? I'm going to copy this thing and I'm going to come and access that very same thing through my CloudFront and see if it can actually work. Here you go. It actually worked. Awesome. Okay, so our thing worked. coming back in here. So we know what we did is we created a custom domain name with GoDaddy. We went to Route53, created a hosted zone with the exact same domain name. We moved the name servers from Route53 to GoDaddy, waited for some time to propagate. We created an ACM certificate, and then we issued CNAME for ACM in the Route53, and then we created an S3 bucket with the same name. It doesn't matter what name you give to it, but for example, if you're creating a static website and you wanted to be that accessed through the CloudFront, if you wanted to create a static website in the S3, that's when you have to give an your exact same name that's for the domain name. It has to be exact same name for the S3. So your S3 bucket and your domain name should be exactly the same in case of static website hosting on S3. But since we are doing that through a CloudFront, then we don't have that restriction. Anyways, okay, then we went to CloudFront. In the CloudFront, we used S3 as our origin domain name, and then we created a CNAME. We selected a CNAME, and then we also created an origin access identity saying that only my S3 can be accessed through the CloudFront, nothing else. And then the last step was I actually created an error card in Route53 for the CloudFront. And there is one last thing for Cognito, which I didn't add it. So now, as you saw, I was able to access those objects in S3 through my custom domain name, right? But if you wanted to have a front end as an app for this entire backend, so what happened right now was this entire thing that we created was the backend, right? So now you need to have a front end for that. Imagine or assume you have a front end for this app, and then that's when you need to have a Cognito, right? So actually, I did work on creating a simple or simplistic UI for this front end, right? So let me see what I have in there. Go to my Xcode. I've actually spent quite some time to be able to create this really simple UI for this app, right? But again, long live ChatGPT. It really helped me to create that front-end code in iOS. I'm using Swift, right? So let's see how I put the front end with the backend. I will be making a completely separate video on how I created the front end and how I integrated the front end with the backend, because that's an entirely different story, and that was something that took me quite some time to figure it out, right? So you can see in this app, I have some pages. So I'm using Swift. In this case, so I have my home page, I have my photo gallery page, I have photo upload page and everything, but I wouldn't go into details of showing you how this everything look like or how it works. But let me just build the project and see how you can see a UI. And what's happening is I can actually through this app load objects into S3, and then also so list the object from the S3 that's see it in my gallery, and then upload the objects into S3 as well. So I'm again how the integration work between the front end and the back end, that will be my next video. But for now, I'm just going to show you how it actually looked like. Awesome. Okay. So first, when I am going to, let me just do something, go into those pages and show you how it works, right? So first thing, when I land onto this page, I'm going to be land on a sign up and sign in page. So as of now, the sign in and sign up page is not linked to the backend, because for that I need to create Cognito user pool. That will take me some time, but for now I'm just going to click on this thing. I put a first name and last name. It really doesn't matter what it is, right? So at gmail.com, it wouldn't take me directly to there, right? But anyway, so I can put just anything, it doesn't matter. So I'm just going to click sign in, right? Because as of now, this is not linked to the backend. Just the user sign up is not linked, but rest of it is. So if I click on my gallery, right, whatever I'm seeing in here is actually the content of my S3 bucket. So these are the photos that are actually being put into my S3 bucket. So it's taking some time to load. It's actually the entire thing, but it's taking time. Anyway, so we have a homepage, and on the homepage I have a sign up and sign in, and then on the and then I have photo gallery page, and then I have photo upload page. I'm not sure why it's taking that long, but let's just see. Sometimes it does take some time. I'm going to close it really quickly and then stop running it. I'm going to run it again to see if I can see all the photos. But I'm assuming it wouldn't matter. But as long as you can see how it works, that's what it matters. I don't want to put anything in here. Just want to go to my gallery, and here you go. I see those objects. Other ones are not loading, but it wouldn't matter. So those are the things that are actually present in my S3. So now I'm going to go back and I wanted to go photo upload, right? So I see no images selected. Go to your camera roll. And this is my camera roll, right? So I'm going to go for some bunnies, some baby goats, again, bunny and cat. I'm going to select it and I'm going to add those things. And now it says upload photos. So you might see that those photos are trying to upload. So you can see the progress bar. Once everything is done, then I'm going to be moved to my S3. So those objects might not be shown right away into here just because it takes some time. But if I go and come back, then I will be seeing those very same objects in here, right? So I'm going to go back in here. So I have gallery page where I list all the objects in my S3, and then I have a photo upload where I put objects into my S3, right? And then I have a camera thing where I actually go and then take a photo, and once that photo is taken, it will be uploaded directly into S3. So since this is a simulator, it wouldn't work, but to be honest, I haven't yet tried it on my actual physical device to see if I can take a photo and can that photo be uploaded to S3, because I'm still working on this app. But nevertheless, I just wanted to show you how you create a backend. And then how with if you don't know how to code yourself, like me, you can use ChatGPT to create a nice front end for that. I mean, the ChatGPT wouldn't give you this entire code right away, right? You definitely have to know somehow how it works, right? But what it can do is it can give you codes embedded pieces, and then you should know how to actually put that into nice front end. For example, for me to create an Xcode project, I need to add those pages, and then I would know what goes into which page and how it works. But let me give you a simple example of how ChatGPT might work, right? So let me just go with a new chat. Another thing I can tell you, never ever use GPT 3.5 for coding, because it gives you so many confusing answers. Or even if I was trying to build my backend with some suggestions from ChatGPT to 3.5, it was really confusing. So ChatGPT 4, you definitely need to have to pay at least $20 per month. I think you can save on some other stuff to pay for this thing, because for me, it was a huge help. If I were to do that, it would take me months. But now I was able to pull off both the backend and the front end in about, I would say, 15 days, something like that. But if it was not ChatGPT, it would have taken me like maybe 2 months, more than that, who knows, right? So let me give you an example, right? So I can give a prompt and see what kind of code it actually gives me and how I can put it. So I will say, I want to create an app in using Swift UI, right? I'll just put it exactly how it is. Swift UI, I want to create an app using Swift UI to upload photos into S3 bucket, right? Please Give me, you don't need to say please, but anyways, it's a habit. Please give me the detailed steps of how to do it, and give me the relevant code. I have a homepage previously content view. So content view is actually when you create a new Xcode project. That's actually the first page where your user is gonna to land on, right before the main app. So if you're not familiar how that is in Swift or Xcode, it really doesn't matter. But as long as you have to give some more, for example, if I just give this thing, it might give me some answers, but it wouldn't know my context. So I'm giving it some context. I have a home page, and I want to add a photo upload page. So give me code for both these pages, right? So I can say I have created an Xcode project with a home page, previously content view, and I want to add a photo upload page. So give me the code for these pages. Let's just see what it's going to give us, right? So sometimes you can give these prompts again and again until you get the right thing, but at least it gives you the thing. So in order to upload an image to an S3 bucket using Spotify, you need to have a working AWS account, which I do. And they give you to add some packages either through Google Pods or maybe through the Swift ACM, which is a Swift package manager, which is a completely different story. Then you have to do some other stuff. But here you go. So this is kind of code that it gives you, okay, what you wanted to upload at the import at the top and how your page might look like. So this is some of the code that it actually gives. But if you copy and paste this entire code into your project, it definitely might not work, right? So you have to understand at least how the structure is when you create a project with Xcode, how the pages are being set. For example, in my case, so I have my very main app. When a user comes, so they first come here and then they go to the home page. And then they see the sign up and sign in. No, so first they go here and then they go to the welcome page. And then on the welcome page, they see the sign up and sign in. Once they sign up and sign in, then they land on the home page. And from on the home page, what they see is actually their photo gallery, a photo upload, and then a camera page, right? So those are some of the structures you might know. And then you have to add some kind of the pod folders or the pod files in there and that entire thing. It might definitely take you some time, but it's actually doable, right? So for me, I have I would say, a beginner level experience in Swift code. But in the past 15 days, I was actually able to pull up this up together, and I'm actually able to build a backend and actually upload these photos directly from this app into S3 was kind of a huge thing for me. So if I can do it with that little experience, I'm sure you can do it. So make sure to use ChatGPT wisely. So yeah, so that's how it is. I will be making another video how to make the front end and how to integrate the front end with the back end. But yeah, that's what it is. I'm going to close this down and close this thing that I had. So you can see that it's still generating. So give me the code for the photo upload, and now it's actually giving me something how to do all those things. So if you know how to put those things in those relevant pages, how to make those changes, it's easy for you. For example, while we were talking, it gave me that much code. If I were to sit down and write that code myself, it will definitely take me so much time. Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to wrap it up. So that's it for now. I am definitely going to be seeing in the coming videos building the front end and integrating the back end with the front end. So bye for now. Have a lovely day or evening. Stay healthy, stay safe, and do your best. Good luck.